My birthday is July 26, 1994. According to History.com, on this day, July 26th of 1931, grasshoppers had descended on crops, devastating millions of acres throughout the American heartland. Iowa, Nebraska, and South Dakota had already been in the midst of a severe drought, which had tremendously caused them to suffer severely during this time. Usually during droughts or very dry conditions, insects like locusts or grasshopper populations can suddenly explode. Egg pods are vulnerable to fungus in wet soil. So when the soil is very dry, swarms can develop and plague agricultural communities. On this particular July day, the swarm was said to be so thick that it blocked out the sun and you could scoop up the grasshoppers with a shovel. Corn stalks were eaten to the ground, leaving the fields bare. And Wyoming professor Jeff Lockwood describes the swarms as, quote, almost like being immersed in a gigantic living being. Speaking of the insects exploding from the ground, hitting against your body and clinging against your clothing, I have found it very interesting that since this dramatic event, there have been no signs of such swarms in the United States, only being spotted in African and Middle Eastern countries. Another interesting event on July 26th would be in 1908, when the Federal Bureau of Investigation was founded. I've always and always will be fascinated in criminal justice. So I find it amusing that the FBI was founded on the date of my birth, 86 years before I was even born. Basically, the Department of Justice was created in 1870 to enforce federal law, hiring private detectives when federal crimes needed investigation at first, only to later rent out investigators from other federal agencies, such as the Secret Service from 1865. The Secret Service had initially been created by the Department of Treasury in order to investigate counterfeiting. Seeking to form an independent and more efficient investigative arm, in 1908, the Department of Justice hired 10 former Secret Service employees to join an expanded office of the Chief Examiner. Thus, the beginning of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The FBI is used as a tool to investigate criminals who evade prosecution by passing over state lines. The agency had grown rapidly from 1908, having 10 agents, to 34 agents by 1909, 1 year later, then immensely expanding over 300 agents by 1917. This, of course, scared Congress, who feared that the FBI's growing authority could lead to abuse of power. The FBI had indeed grown from investigating criminals evading prosecution to the Bureau being given responsibility in investigating draft registries, violators of the Espionage Act of 1917, and immigrants suspected of radicalism. In 1917, J. Edgar Hoover had joined the Department of Justice, becoming the special assistant to Attorney General Mitchell Palmer. Hoover, being deeply anti-radical, had come to the forefront of federal law enforcement during the Red Scare. For those unfamiliar with the Red Scare, Hoover had initially set up a card index system listing every radical leader, organization, and publication in the United States, and by 1921 had amassed some 450,000 files. More than 10,000 suspected communists were also arrested during this period. But the vast majority of these people were briefly questioned and then released. By the 1920s, the FBI had expanded to become an efficient crime-fighting machine. complete with a centralized fingerprint file and a crime lab and a training school for agents. Then in the 1930s, the FBI had launched the fight against organized crime, and so was finally highly regarded by both Congress and the American public. However, due to controversies surrounding Hoover's expansion of wiretaps and surveillance known as COUNTELPRO, which is a secret counterintelligence program that initially targeted the United States Communist Party, but was later expanded to infiltrate and disrupt any radical organization in America. This led to media, public, and Congress becoming suspicious that, as predicted by Congress in the beginning, the FBI had been abusing its authority by 1969, which inevitably led to Congress passing laws in 1969 that requires Senate confirmation of future FBI directors and limiting their tenure to 10 years, opposed to Hoover's reign of 52 years.